Welcome everybody to this webinar on self-advocacy. Your Voice Matters, hosted by the Volunteer Legal Advocacy Program at the MS Society of Canada, BC and Yukon. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Ray Miller. I'm an MS ambassador with the MS Society, and I'm very happy to be moderating this webinar. Before we begin, the MS Society has asked me to share a few things with you. The MS Society gratefully acknowledges the funding grant received from the Law Foundation of BC, which is making this particular webinar, Self-advocacy, Your Voice Matters, possible. Identification of needs, determination of objectives, selection and content of content and speakers, educational methods and materials are the sole responsibility of the MS Society and advisors. We would also like to review the MS Society's mission statement: to connect and empower the MS community to create positive change. Now, as we get started on our presentations, I will read our bios for our four presenters, just so that you know who is coming up. Our first speaker should be a familiar face for you. Linda McGowan has been a long-term volunteer with the MS Society of Canada, Lower Mainland Chapter. She has been a member of the Shared Voices Newsletter Committee since 1995. As a contributing writer, she educates readers on current MS research and treatments and offers information about activities in the community, encouraging people with MS to be out and about. Linda is a strong advocate for people with disabilities as the community outreach liaison for First Transit, the provider of handy dart services in Metro Vancouver, which is a critical link to TransLink. Linda provides effective two-way communication on transportation options and management of quality of life issues for the disabled community. She speaks as an ambassador for the MS Society and promotes accessibility both at home and around the world. Linda is the recipient of the 2012 Division President's Award. Our second speaker is Michelle Hewitt. Michelle is a longtime ambassador with the for MS, diagnosed in 2008. Michelle deals with an aggressive type of MS that limits her daily activities to mornings before fatigue sets in. Winner of the MS Society's Advocacy Award and Kelowna's 40 over 40, Michelle is an active member of the MS community and is the administrator of the Facebook group for Canadians with MS. Advocating for MS is extremely important to her, as is letting people with MS know that they are not alone. She says she has found a new life in advocacy and is currently the volunteer lead of the MS Society Government Relations Committee for the BC and Yukon area, and a member of the National Government Relations Committee. And Michelle is currently working on her PhD, which is really impressive for me, researching care for working age people with progressive chronic illnesses. And away from that, she spends all her time with her two Burmese mountain dogs. Busy, busy. Our third and fourth speakers are in a pair, are Denise Kendrick and Mary Lang. First with Denise. Denise Kendrick is an occupational therapy, regulated BC, is an occupational therapist and a graduate of the Master of Occupational Therapy program, Department of Occupational Science and Occupational Therapy at the University of British Columbia. She spent the last 5 years developing a student-enhanced occupational therapy program at the UBC Multiple Sclerosis Clinic. With help of more than 30 students, Denise has harnessed the intersection between her clinical practice and research work to develop occupational therapy programs built upon the principles of self-efficacy. These programs provide clients with tools and strategies needed to effectively self-manage their MS and mitigate the impact of symptoms on their daily life. Denise also holds a position as a clinical assistant professor within the Department of Occupational Science and Occupational Therapy, which has provided opportunities to teach and supervise students in a classroom learning and research capacity. She considers herself lucky to work in this unique role where she learns every day from her research, clients, and students. and applies this into practice to help improve daily functions for persons with MS. And then our fourth speaker, co-presenting with Denise, is Mary Lang. Mary Lang is a social worker with a master's degree of social work from UBC. Mary is new to the MS clinic at UBC with extensive experience in mental health and addictions. Individual, couple, and family therapy. Through many work settings in healthcare and private practice, Mary has received training outside of her university education. Over the past 10 years, she has incorporated mindfulness into her work and led many groups, such as mindfulness-based cognitive therapy for depression. She is enjoying the opportunity of integrating her years of experience with her clients who have MS. That's all four of our speakers that we're going to be hearing from this morning. I would like to now introduce our first speaker, who deserves an incredible introduction because I've seen her speak many times before. I would like to ask Linda McGowan. Could you please start with your presentation with us, Linda?
Perfect.
So,
all right, and I'll let you know when we need to. I will speak about self-advocacy. I will use a number of examples, some of them more fun examples, some of them more serious, but I find that's the most effective way to demonstrate the theory that I'm going to present. Self-advocates represent themselves. They identify their own needs and the resources needed to meet those needs. I find that self-advocacy is an important part for everyone's life. It is particularly important for people with MS who may rely on other people for support to get through their everyday. It is still important that you have control of your own resources and you do have the right to make decisions and to control your own life. I'll give you an example from this. I use myself because I need home care personal support. And some of you may be familiar with the Choice and Supports for Independent Living in British Columbia. And there is a similar program in Ontario and in the Maritimes in a number of provinces in Canada. And what this means is that the health agency will assess my needs for personal care. For instance, you need 100 hours a month. And then they identify what that will cost and how much is my responsibility and theirs. And on the first of the month, they put that money in a bank account for me, a particular bank account. I add my own. And after that, I become the employer. So I advertise and hire my own home support workers. I set my own schedule. I do my own payroll. I do T4s and pay EI and CPP, but it means on a day when I want to swim, I could have someone at 8 in the morning, and on a day when I need to be out early, then I can arrange it for 7:30. And it just gives me the control to make my own decisions of who is going to work with me personally and how we're going to make that work. So if you have questions about that, just send them in the chat box to Ray and we'll talk after. Self-advocacy, I think, puts you in the driver's seat. It will improve your quality of life, enhance your independence, and certainly your spontaneity. Okay, we need to move here again. Can we flip another slide? Okay. Advocacy is active, and I think it always involves choice, attitude, energy, and participation. And you have to be willing to put those 4 criteria in. You have to have the correct attitude. You need to be willing to participate in energy, and you have a choice in how things are done. Advocacy needs to be in your heart and in your mind. It's in your tone of voice, and it's in the way that you approach other people to be effective. You should go to the next one. One of the most important things in self-advocacy is to know yourself well, to know what you need, and to know how to get it. So in knowing yourself well, I think you need to see your ability in the disability. Lots of people are currently, they look at the disability first, but really you need to look at your ability first, what's important to you, what you need to make that happen, and don't sell yourself short. I'm going to give you lots of examples here of demonstrating your abilities. The manual wheelchair I'm sitting in right now is about 4 years old or 5 years old. And when I was going to get a new one, I went to Advanced Mobility, and the fellow I work with there, he said, what you need, the OT, they wanted to put my chair a bit higher. And I said, but if you put it higher, I can't pick paper clips off the floor. And he said, is that really important to you? I said, absolutely. I don't want other people having to pick stuff up after me. And then I had other criteria, but I needed my foot pedals to go out, and I needed my foot pedals to turn in. And he said to me, well, if you just want all that stuff, I'll just give you your old chair back. But when I went to my final appointment to have my chair fitted, when I went in, there were 6 paper clips on the floor. He said, okay, see if you can pick them up. So somehow I was able to get that across, that it was important to me to be able to pick things up. It was really important. And I know that I can do that if the chair is at the right height to do that. The other one I can give you, and this is more a fun example, I was in Hawaii a number of years ago and I wanted to go parasailing. And of course, they look at me in a wheelchair and say, well, you can't go parasailing because we land in the water. I said, that's okay, I can swim. He said, are you sure? I said, yes. He said, well, get in the water and show me. So I was quite willing to get in the water and swim. He said, all right, you're going up. So you need to know yourself well, know what you can do, and know how to get that information across to other people. Part of doing all that, knowing yourself well and spreading that information, is to be pleasantly assertive. The first example I can give is, on the buses in British Columbia and perhaps other places in Canada, there are courtesy seats at the front of the bus. And there's a number of people, colleagues of ours, who have invisible MS. And so when they get on the bus, the courtesy seats aren't available to them, and they don't know how to ask for that. So it's another thing to be pleasantly assertive and say, excuse me, but I would really need to have that seat, please. No explanation. You don't have to tell them you have MS. It's just that to be pleasantly assertive, it's really important to me to have that seat today. So it's important that you share with people what your needs are. The other one that has been really important to me is, as people often with MS, I'm prone to bladder infections. And if I get a bladder infection on a Friday afternoon and send my specimen in Saturday morning, and the results don't come back on a holiday weekend till Tuesday, by the time I get my prescription, it's Wednesday, by then I'm in the hospital with delirium. So I've worked with my doctor, and I now have a standing order for antibiotics. If I think I have a bladder infection, I take the specimen, start my antibiotics right away. I have a standing order for a requisition to take a specimen into the lab at any time, because they won't take a specimen without a current requisition. She's left me a number of blank ones, and I just put the date on it when I need to go. So that's another way of knowing yourself really well, that I know that if I wait 4 or 5 days, I'm in real trouble. And to be pleasantly assertive, work with your doctor and work with the lab to make sure that happens. I've also worked with the lab. I keep in my refrigerator a number of CNS bottles so that they're there for me to take the specimen whenever I need it. The other way that I say be pleasantly assertive, and this is a more fun one, and that's where the air balloon comes up. I was in Australia about 12 years ago, and they were advertising all the time about these great air balloons, and people were going to go air ballooning. And they looked at me, and the fellow said, I can't take you air ballooning. I said, why not? He said, you're in a wheelchair. And I looked down and I thought, well, yeah, I kind of have that idea. Like, I haven't walked since 1992. I know I'm in a wheelchair. And he said, but I've never taken anybody in a wheelchair. I said, has anybody ever asked you? He said, no. And I said, I don't need to take my chair. I said, I can sit on a barrel. He said, and I kind of convinced him, and he said, well, I don't know. And then finally he threw up his hands. He said, I'll pick you up at 4 in the morning. So I did go air ballooning, and one of my most favorite photographs is a picture of my wheelchair by itself in the field in Australia. And I sometimes say to people when they're looking to be assertive and to be self-assertive, that there are times when you leave the disability behind, that the disability doesn't always need to be up front and center. Sometimes it's just kind of beside your ears and not always up front. Part of being a self-advocate is um, to be prepared, to
I'm
always.
sorry to bother you.
Yeah.
I can't hear you anymore.
Okay.
The volume just went really, really low for some reason, like when you were sharing your screen, and I haven't changed any of my settings.
Okay, well, and I haven't either. Can you hear me now?
No, your volume is completely low, like
Cole, can you
it's like a whisper. So I'm not sure if anything. If others are having the same.
I can hear you just fine.
I can hear you just fine too. I haven't noticed anything changing. It might actually be something to do with your connection might be lagging a little bit. Is her video good too?
Yeah, I could see her. I just can't hear. Maybe I'll log out and go back in.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so we're going to talk about being prepared and what are the rules. And this has become really more important during the pandemic. One of the examples is if you want to go swimming, and now we can go back swimming sometimes, that you need to know that you put your bathing suit on before you leave home, that you can't use the change room when you go, you can only use it after. If you need help at a number of activities, you need to bring your own help, and you need to know those rules before you go. So it's worthwhile doing that investigation. I always say, not so important now with pandemic, but in terms of these pictures, is I always have a bag at the door. And the bag at the door is if something comes up, you need to be prepared to go, either a meeting, somebody asked you out for lunch, you need to go to the municipality and talk to someone, you need your bag at the door. And in the summertime, it needs to have sunscreen and water and a sun hat, and in the winter, mitts and a toque.
Sorry, now we can't hear Linda anymore either.
Well, mine hasn't changed at all.
Okay, now it's a bit better.
Yeah.
Better?
Yeah, I can still hear you just fine. So I'm not sure what's going on with some connections. Not hearing. Can everybody please message me in the chat if you cannot hear me, and I will try and troubleshoot on this end.
Okay, shall I carry on? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you just perfectly.
Okay. So we're on to being prepared, and there's a whole lot to being prepared. I have a picture there of the bag at the door. Certainly, if you live in Vancouver, British Columbia, you always have to have an umbrella with you. The computer will give you access to the issue that you're concerned about and look up who else has addressed this issue, when did they address it, and what were the results of that. Our next slide, I always, let's put our next one up. There's a saying that you should consult the creative minds of little people. And those little people are the what. What are you concerned about? What do you need to accomplish? Why is it important to you? Where do you need to go to find that information? Who do you need to talk to? And when does this need to be accomplished? And the final one of all of those other 5 W's is, how is it going to happen? So if you can remember that expression, that you consult the creative minds of the little people, and the little people are the 5 W's. Need to do your homework to be prepared. Look at the politics, look at the hierarchy, who has been talking about this issue before. Are you talking to the right person? Are the person you're talking to be someone can make a change or offer support in your issue? And issues don't have to be big. Some of them can be just, like I said, to go air ballooning in Australia. There are more important and serious ones like bladder infections, and you end up in the hospital in 5 days. So you can use self-advocacy for even the little things. In the grocery store, you can't reach something on the shelf. To be pleasantly assertive, to use the right tone of voice, say, excuse me, could you please help me get that off the shelf? So self-advocacy doesn't have to be a great big thing. It's something that you start to incorporate in your life on an absolute daily basis. Give you an example of this. I have a lady who comes to help me clean, and one day I went in the kitchen. She said, I made everything tidy. I put everything at the back, way up back of the counter. Well, that's very well, but tidiness is maybe not my criteria. Maybe my ability to reach it is more important. And somehow you have to get that across to people without them being hurt and insulted, but in order to meet your own needs. If you don't fit into the identified eligibility or criteria, don't give up, and don't give up your concern. I have an example of this one as well. A number of years ago, I had a Honda, and I don't drive now, but I had a Honda, and it had automatic transmission, but I was having trouble driving and I needed hand controls. At the time, Volkswagen and Ford and Chevy all had programs that if you bought a new vehicle, they'd help you with the hand controls. Well, number one, I didn't have a new vehicle, and Honda didn't have a program. So I wrote a letter to their head office, and I quoted all of the programs. I quoted the Volkswagen program, the Ford, the Chevy, and at the bottom, and I said, I don't have a new Honda, but I do have a Honda, and I would like to keep it for a long time, and I need to have hand controls. And I ended by saying, thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to your response of what you will do for me. And a letter came back with a check for $800 in the mail to put the hand controls on my car. My hand control at the time cost $802. So even though you don't fall into the criteria, I didn't have a new car, they didn't have a program, but there were other people who had had this issue, and it had been addressed successfully with other companies. And so at the time, it's don't give up if you don't fit in the criteria and you're not really eligible for what they say you are. It's still worth a try. So when you've done all of this, you need to follow up. I always say in person and by telephone is more effective than email. I think emails are a little bit impersonal, and if somebody's really helped you, that it's important to have them direct. Sometimes a little thank you note in the mail will help as well. I keep a number of thank you notes here, just prepared for, I can write a note and send it off to somebody who's gone out of their way for me. You need to show your gratitude and appreciation. And we need to change our slide here, because I think the next one's going to tell us, oh, back one, please, that you always need to say, thank you, thank you, thank you. If people have gone out of their way and done something for you, then it's really important to say thank you. Let's grab one more slide here. The ripples are wide. When you're doing self-advocacy, you're doing it for yourself and your own issue, but the ripples are wide. You're also impacting on other people with and without disabilities. And that's why it's so important to start to self-advocate from day one. I'll give you a prime example. Last spring, my son was down with his two children from Vernon and their dog. And so I live in New Westminster in the Key. We went to the dog park, but at the entrance to the dog park, there was about a 3-inch wood board step, and I was in a power chair. So there's no way I could get over that. And I thought, this doesn't work for me, but how many other people and families and seniors are coming with their walkers and other people who need to get into this dog park? So I made a telephone call to the Access Awareness Committee in New Westminster. I made a call to the engineering department. I have a commitment in the spring of 2021 that will be corrected. So although I wanted to get into the dog park, those ripples are wide. It's not only going to affect me, it's going to affect other people, people with dogs and people with walkers and canes that can't get over that step as well. So concentrate on what you need, but knowing that what you do will affect lots of other people in the world.
I appreciate that very much, Linda. That was an interesting presentation. I actually do have a question that I'll give you, but I'll wait until the end when we get to the Q&A section for you. But but that was a great presentation. I would like to now take a moment and just recognize our next speaker, who is Michelle Hewitt. She is going to give us a presentation on government self-advocacy and specifically government relations. So Michelle Hewitt on government relations.
Thank you very much, Ray, and thank you very much, Linda. So we can move over to the next slide. What do we mean when we talk about government advocacy? So we mean contacting the different branches of government to ask for assistance or to raise awareness on issues that affect you, especially in areas where you see the need for systemic change. Now, systemic change is one of those phrases that we hear a lot. What does that mean? Well, it simply means changes that you want to make to the whole system. As Linda was just talking about, making the change to being able to access a dog park, to get rid of that lip, doesn't just affect her, it affects everybody that goes to that dog park. So if we need to make a change that affects the entire system as opposed to an individual problem, that's simply what that means. Next slide, please. So what does the MS Society do to advocate? It might seem strange in a talk about self-advocacy that I begin by saying what the MS Society does, but I think it's important that if you're going to advocate for yourself, you know that you're part of this bigger system within the MS Society. So the MS Society has staff members who specialize in advocacy. It means that they're able to stay update on the many provincial and federal announcements that come out. It also means that there's a consistent message across the country for the MS Society based on priorities that the MS Society has developed, which means that we're not competing against each other across the country. Government officials don't say, well, I'm hearing that this is the priority in BC, but that's the priority in Ontario. And that's really important because it means that ultimately we advocate more strongly. It also means that we're able to work with other organizations to provide a strong message, a stronger message than if we were doing it from a single organization. And so the MS Society is able to do a lot of that outreach that perhaps as individuals wouldn't be as able to happen as effectively. The MS Society also provides a coordinated response for special campaigns, particularly during May, MS Awareness Month, and also importantly, during provincial and federal elections. So next slide, please. Right now, in BC, we have an election that's with 1 day left. This is a typical slide that would be put out either federally or provincially by the MS Society, and it gives the priorities that we're working on at any time. And it not only gives what that priority is, but it also gives the action that we're asking for. So that's key, right? It's not just that, you know, fix this, it's like what we would like to happen. So for example, the first priority is greater and timely access to approved MS therapies because they reduce healthcare costs, improve quality of life, delay disability. So what are we asking the government to do in BC? Provide timely access to all Health Canada approved MS therapies. Okay, so that's one example that is where our action is specific to things that happen in BC, but our priorities are common across the country. So as you can see that our priorities at the moment relate to MS therapies, home and community care, income, employment disability benefits. And you can see there that there's a specific ask around BC's COVID supplement that we would like to remain as a permanent one. And then the fourth one is a BC specific one because it relates to the disability legislation that we would hope to be in place. Next slide, please. So what does this have to do with self-advocacy? Well, collective advocacy can also be self-advocacy. The MS Society has email campaigns for each of these federal and provincial elections usually. And the emails that we're given often include a standard response with all the information, but that you can edit it to include your own story. The more personal the story, the more likely you are to get a response from your government representative, be it at a provincial or federal level. For anybody on the call who's in BC who hasn't yet contacted the candidates in the election tomorrow, you can go on the MS Society website and there is a whole section set up for you to reply, but you need to get your skates on because it really needs to be done by tomorrow. Another part of self-advocacy during election campaigns is that you often get to meet your MPs, your MLAs, and the candidates that are hoping to become your MPs, MLAs, or whatever the equivalent term is in your province or territory. They come to you. They often knock on your door. You don't have to go anywhere. You can just be there and you can speak to them. And so you can tell them your story. Tell them if you've connected with them before, if you've connected with any part of the government before and what that response has been. And be prepared to talk about issues for people with MS. As Linda said, we're all part of a big team here. So you can talk about issues that affect you, and you can talk about issues that affect all people with MS, because ultimately together our voices are stronger. Next slide, please. However, self-advocacy is sometimes the way to go. It might be that the issue that you want to be dealt with isn't currently covered by the MS Society's priorities. For example, say medical equipment. You could see that it wasn't an issue that stood out on its own in BC's priorities then, but for you, there may be a really personal issue relating to how you need equipment and the government programs aren't working for you. Going on for that, it could be that the issue is personal and complex. Our health, our lives are complex. The way that those two things work together, whether it comes to our income, whether it comes to our housing, whether it comes to access to the things that we need to support us as a disabled person, or that we need to support us through our direct health needs, can often be extremely individual. And we're looking at lots of separate parts of a massive system working together. And most often, for a personal situation, you find that that might not happen. You may have a very specific personal case, in which case self-advocacy and that direct contact is the way to go. You may be advised to contact your elected official directly, as government staff can't make the changes you want. I had an example of this a few years ago when a young man, a son of a friend, came to stay to work here in the winter season from Australia, but he had lived here as a child. It meant he couldn't get a work visa as someone coming to the country as an Australian, and he also couldn't get a social insurance number as somebody who had previously lived here, because the rules had changed in between, and the computer system that both Immigration and Service Canada was working with simply would not give them the ability to do what they needed to do. We were told to get in touch with our MP, and it was something that they could directly apply for, and that number came through. So obviously, if you're getting the advice that this is something that should happen but can't be done by the government staff, you can do that. Also, if you have a good relationship with the elected official at the right level of government, sure, that's the person that you need to go to. I've been doing this for some time, so I tend to know all the local officials quite well. They're not necessarily my politics, and that's not important one way or another. It's, that they're here to support every member of the community, no matter what your politics are. And I find that if I need to pass on something, we've developed so much of a relationship that they will listen to me and we can have that conversation. So if you already have that relationship, I know that people in the North often tell me that their government advocacy is to go and sit down and have a beer in the days when we could go out and meet up with people, because everybody knows everybody. If that's the way it works, that's in your community, that's the way it works. Next slide, please. As Linda mentioned, it's also really important to get in touch with the right person. So there are obviously, in our different levels of government, people that you get in touch with for certain things. So starting closer to home, in your municipality, in your local region, your regional officials, depending on what that closest area of government is, they are typically the people responsible for those things that are closest to you. So again, going back to Linda's step example, contacting your local system to make that change is something that you would do. If it was, for example, clearing snow off your sidewalks and that it was, a particular issue for you as someone with mobility disabilities, and that the snow wasn't being cleared as regularly as it needed to be, or if it was somewhere you needed to park, that's very much a local issue. A lot of places, not all places, have accessibility committees. And so another good place to reach out with some specific issues are also those committees. I also make sure that I make good use of the system that my local government has for reporting issues. There's an online service request issue, and I just go fill that in. I always explain that the reason is it's an accessibility issue. Then if I don't get the answer I want, I can say, I've used your system, it hasn't worked for me, now I'm reaching out to talk to a human directly. Our provincial governments are responsible for health, social development, poverty reduction. Those are typically, housing, those are typically the issues that are directly related to our MS needs. So reaching out to those ministers or your local representative, be it MLAs or whatever the names are where you live, is important for that. It's always a good idea that if you're going to email a minister, that you also copy that to your local MLA, so that if you don't get a timely response from the level that you're reaching out to, that you can then go to your local official as well. The federal government doesn't have control over a huge number of things that relate to us as disabled people, ironically, because it's often things to do with the postal service and national defense and things like that. But the issues often cross over with provincial governments and it all gets a bit muddy. So sometimes you need to reach out to both. We do have a Minister for Disability Inclusion. Obviously there are things related to health that happen federally. There's things, obviously, for Health Canada and the way that drugs are approved is a federal responsibility. So sometimes you might reach out to your federal people, you might reach out to your provincial people, or you might reach out to both. So it's really important that you don't send, for example, clearing snow to your federal MP. They may be sympathetic, but honestly, they're just going to tell you to get in touch with your city or your municipality or whoever it is. So if you're going to take the time to get in touch, make sure that you get in touch with the right people. Next slide, please. So how are you going to do this? Linda touched on most of these points. So first of all, being prepared, aside from the things that Linda talked about, having your bag ready, part of the tools in that bag is your elevator pitch. Now, what does that mean? Well, imagine Justin Trudeau comes into the elevator with you and you've got 30 seconds before you're going to get to the next floor and one of you is going to get out. What are you going to say to him in that 30 seconds? What are the priorities that you want to get across about what your life is like as a person with MS and where you'd like to see change? You never know when you're going to meet somebody that you can share your story with. You never know when, you know, you may be out and about and there's something set up for a local radio station and the MP happens to come by, or your mayor, or whoever it is, and you find yourself stood next to them. Well, what a great opportunity. What are you going to say to them? And, you know, if you don't practice it, you're going to find that you probably stumble over your words and come away regretting it. A good line to that pitch is always, would you mind if I follow up and get in touch with you personally? And they're usually going to say, sure, but at least you've broken the ice. It's more important to use more honey and vinegar. When you're advocating for yourself on a personal issue, you're going to probably be frustrated and angry, because that's how you've got to the point when you want to get in touch with somebody from one of the various levels of government. It's an issue that you've tried to work on yourself. You've tried to deal with your local system, and you've got to the point where you're not going to make any change. Think about it yourself. Who are you more likely to respond to? The person who presents themselves in a factual, personal manner that tells this story that's very hard to ignore, or the person that basically has an angry rant at you? Write a draft, put it to one side for 24 hours, and then look at it again. Ask somebody else to proofread it for you to make sure that the points that you really need to get across are there. Very importantly, keep it factual and personal. If you don't know where to get the facts from, the MS Society website is a great place to start. If you can't find the information on there, give one of the MS navigators a call and tell them, I'm trying to write an email to my MP. I need to know some information on this. So you're going to tell this compelling personal story, and you're going to back it up with the facts. On top of that, I've given the information here for BC. You can contact Charles, or you can contact SORAB. Charles is the government relations specialist. SORAB is the VLAP specialist, depending on what the topic is. If it's something that you know that you're going to need legal assistance with in some way, keep SORAB in the loop, or whoever your SORAB is where you are. If you know it's something that's more to do with that government systemic change, keep Charles in the loop. If it was, say, if all of a sudden we found that tomorrow in BC that people went to vote in person and things were pretty inaccessible, and that became a huge issue. Hopefully it isn't, because we've been working on it for a long time. But if it was, Charles would be the person to get in touch with. So I wish you all good luck. I hope that anything that you do has great effect, and I know that together we can make great change happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michelle. That was an excellent presentation. Just remember to keep sending me those questions. And now I would like to introduce Denise Wozniak and Mary Lang for their presentation about advocacy in healthcare. And Mary and Denise, are your microphones working and okay?
I think I'm just going to start off, Ray. So Mary's going to stay muted with her video off, and then I'll turn it over to her. Are you able to hear me okay?
I'm able to hear you okay. I'm actually able to spotlight both of you on video if you both want to be on video at the same time.
That's okay. I think we'll just turn it over. Otherwise, we'll get a bit of feedback. So Mary will stay muted and video off until it's her section.
Okay, when it's time, okay. I will spotlight Mary when you're finished your section then. So Denise Kendrick, please, up to you.
Excellent. Well, I just want to say, first of all, Mary and I have been chatting here while listening to Linda and Michelle, and I think we actually don't have too much to add. They did such an excellent job of covering a lot of, I think, what is important to talk about today. So we'll just do our best to add in our 2 cents here. So I'd just like to thank everyone for joining us, and thank you to SORAB for asking Mary and I to contribute to the webinar. It's given us a chance to have a lot of rich discussion around the topic of advocacy while we've been preparing for this. So we hope to bring a little bit of that discussion to today's talk. So we've decided to show the image here that you'll see of the interaction between you, the individual, your family, and other support system, and the healthcare system. And the reason why is that we think this is a model that kind of underpins the concept of advocacy by highlighting the importance of this interaction. So our talk today is really going to focus on two pieces that we think are key. So the first piece that I'm going to address is the need to really understand the healthcare system, the system that you're sort of a part of. And the second part that Mary's going to address is understanding yourself. So I'll pass the torch over to Mary for that second half. So why is it important to understand the healthcare system? I'll start with a bit of an analogy. So last week I had my summer tires swapped out for my winter tires, and I'm certainly not an expert in tires, but I had done my homework ahead of time. So when I booked my appointment, I thought it'd be important to ask how long it would take, how much it would cost, if there was somewhere that was going to be safe for me to sit inside, or whether I'd need to be prepared to walk around for that time. So asking those questions and understanding the system of Cal Tire allowed me to be prepared. When I arrived to my appointment, I had an umbrella, I had a rain jacket because it was Vancouver, like Linda mentioned, and I was comfortable while walking around while the work was being done. Because I'd also read up about the cost of that, when it came time to pay, they had actually overcharged me for the cost of the tire swap. And because I'd done that homework and understood that I shouldn't have to pay for the swap, because I'd purchased my tires there, I was able to bring it up and they promptly adjusted the cost. So having done that bit of homework to understand that system really helped me have a better outcome and have a less stressful experience. So the healthcare system can be very overwhelming. And I think Mary can probably agree with me that even working within it, sometimes it's hard to understand. And there's so many moving pieces to it. So we're not expecting that people understand it inside and out, but it is important to ask the right questions to get a bit of a basic understanding of the system, and importantly, how you fit within that. So how does your MS care fit within the larger system? For example, when are you coming to your MS clinic neurologist with questions versus your family doctor? Who is a part of your healthcare team aside from the neurologist? So while there's certainly an important part of the team, you know, you do need other people on that team as well. So what are the access, what is your access to different allied health professionals like social workers and OTs or other specialists, and who should you be seeing and when? How often should you be having appointments? So that's a good thing to know from the beginning. Should you expect to see your providers every 6 months or once a year? And how do you access them in between when issues come up? What other healthcare professionals do you have access to when your needs aren't being met within the MS clinic itself? So for example, here in Vancouver, we've got a lot of specialty services at our local rehab center, GF Strong, that will address issues to do with sexual health, vocational supports that we can't provide necessarily here within the clinic, but can easily connect you with if that's a need. Who should you contact in between appointments with concerns, and how should you do that? So, you know, does the team prefer that you phone in with concerns or send emails, and how quickly will you expect to hear a response from them? What should you bring to your appointments? So should you come prepared with a symptom diary? Should you bring a copy of your own MRI if you got that done outside of the system? What do you need to bring to have a successful appointment? And who can you bring with you? So would it be beneficial to have a friend or a family member sit in on appointments? So those are good questions that just sort of help you to better understand the system of your MS care, not only locally, but also within a larger system. Next slide. So another part is to understand your condition. So again, this doesn't mean that you need to be necessarily regularly reading peer-reviewed journal articles about MS, but it is important to understand the basics. So learning about your disease course, whether that's relapsing remitting MS or secondary progressive, what does that mean, and what are common symptoms that you may see? And this just helps you to be able to speak the language. So when you are going for your follow-up neurology appointment, you can say, you know, I've read up about spasticity and I've got these tight muscles in my calves. Is this spasticity? I think that might be the case. And it just allows those to be more focused conversations because you're speaking that same language. Now, it's important to look up as well what treatments are available for you. So that can be everything from the different disease-modifying therapies that are being recommended to complementary and alternative medicines, such as yoga for spasticity. Understanding what treatments exist for various symptoms just allows you, again, to ask for those. So if you think that would be something that would be beneficial, then you can, at your appointment, say, I'd really like to try yoga to manage my spasticity. What are your thoughts on that and where can I access that? If you're new to a clinic, ask for an orientation. Ask for somebody to show you around and introduce you to the various team members, or at least give you a bit of a virtual tour so that you know who's who in the zoo. I'll also emphasize the importance of seeking information from credible sources. So the internet can be pretty overwhelming, especially these days, and you can quickly find yourself down a rabbit hole of information. So when possible, trying to stick to gathering this information from sites that are credible. So a good example is the MS Society. They've got great information on the disease itself, various symptoms and treatments, and that can be a really good jumping off point for discussions with your healthcare providers. Next slide. So here's just a couple examples of tools that can be used when you're thinking of preparing for your medical appointments. So this Ask Me 3 is a good tool to consider completing either during the appointment or just bringing to the appointment to get a better understanding of what you should expect from that appointment with your healthcare provider. Next slide. And the other one here comes from CCMI, which is a great resource for patient handouts and programs that sort of promote this concept of self-efficacy. So this template itself can be used when you're having to make a decision. So if you're making a decision, let's say your neurologist has determined that you do have some spasticity in your legs and that you should start on a medication specifically to treat that, but you're not sure, using a tool like this can just help you to be a more active partner in your medical care by having a bit of a methodical process to go through to make that decision and even bringing that into an appointment. Next slide. So I think Linda and Michelle both really touched on this in terms of communication. So I think practicing good communication and assertive communication, but respectful, is really important when you're engaging in your care. It can be easier said than done, but if you have taken the time to prepare for your appointment and have even written down things that you'd like to share, it just allows for that more streamlined communication. So I think Linda gave the example of working with an OT and a vendor around purchasing a new manual wheelchair, and her coming with that information of what's important for her to be able to reach down and pick things up off the floor actually makes my job as an OT easier, because it's her communicating really what her needs are to me and what's important to her, and it allows me to focus my assessment a little bit better. So certainly don't ever feel that bringing that information forward is an issue, because it really does, it makes everyone's job a little easier and makes it easier for us to ensure that your needs are getting met. It's also important to remember that healthcare providers can make mistakes. They certainly do happen. If a mistake's been made, it's important to speak up. So, you know, maybe you've put a call into one of the healthcare providers and you're expecting a call back, and it really just feels like too long has passed. They said they'd get back to you within a couple of weeks, and it's been a month. It never hurts to make a second phone call and to just, you know, again, in a polite way, say, you know, I thought I would have heard back from you sooner. I just wanted to make sure that you're still working on that for me, because people do make mistakes and things do get missed, and it's important to feel that you can speak up about that. So other good ways that you can be an active member within your own care is to reach out for test results. So signing up for My eHealth or other versions of online lab results, so that, as Linda talked about, you can just be a really active member in knowing when your results are coming in and following up on those. Another good way is to keep copies of medical records. So usually within most health authorities, you actually have the right to request your health records. And, you know, maybe you end up keeping a bit of a binder or a folder of your various records so that you can keep track of that and know when you need to follow up on certain things as well. So now I'm going to turn it over to Mary to talk about understanding your own needs, which is an equally important aspect to advocating within your own healthcare. So take it away, Mary.
Okay, yes. Well, so far, I think things are being beautifully highlighted in terms of self-advocacy is being so nicely presented already that the part that I think I will touch on within the healthcare system is the piece of really getting to know yourself. And by getting to know yourself, it's how you learn about yourself in relationship to your illness, and paying attention to it, and being able to notice the changes over time and being able to communicate that with your healthcare professionals. And I think it's much easier to advocate for yourself when you've really connected with yourself and maybe even documented things that you're noticing. So one of the things that I like to use is the triangle of awareness, which is really mindfully checking in with yourself regularly. And so it could be that you're in a work setting and you've got lots of stimulation and pressures on you. And by taking the time to just check in with yourself every once in a while, you know, what am I thinking? You know, what are the thoughts that I have right now? What are the emotions I have right now? What are the body sensations I have right now? Can help you keep track of what's happening for you and how the work environment might be affecting you, which will then help you communicate what your needs are to your healthcare professionals. So an example might be someone's experiencing numbness and tingling, which might be a fairly common symptom that one experiences, but maybe you're also noticing that it's increased since you're under a lot of work pressure. And so just those kinds of observations are enormously helpful in communicating what your needs are with your healthcare professionals. Like maybe some accommodations at work need to happen so that you can have more breaks and be able to just manage your stress levels that way. Let me see here. Yeah, so paying attention to what's important to you. So I need to know, yeah, thank you. You know, what's important to you, what's going to help you with your personal goals that you've paid attention to. For instance, for you, it might be that you want to focus on your mobility and get help with that. Or it could be that you're wanting to re-explore parts of your career. Maybe there's some things that maybe you can't do anymore, but you still want to keep on working and have some help assisting you with your career. You might want to communicate with have better communication with your family members, and that might mean that family might need to be educated on what's going on for you too. So, and so that could be your goal. Having time to connect with yourself and explore new interests and new ways of being are all part of this journey. And asking for help and developing a supportive team, both outside and within the healthcare system, is critical for getting through this and not getting isolated in the process. And I think there's one more slide, I believe, isn't there? Representing your needs in appointments, I think that's already being covered, but just writing things down, being really particular about what your needs are and communicating them to your healthcare providers. And of course, that leads to having a strong partnership with the team of people that you're working with, which is really important. So then there's what do you do when your needs aren't being met in the healthcare system? And so many of those have already been covered, but most importantly is communicate your concerns with your healthcare provider directly. That might need to even go further up the system to a quality care office. That's going to differ from province to province depending on the medical system there. You can also ask for another healthcare provider, and you can ask for a professional advocate to help you navigate yourself through the system, depending on what the issues are. And as we know with the MS Society, we have patient navigators and advocates and so forth that you can look into. So I think that's pretty much it from my end. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have some time for some Q&A. I did receive a couple of questions in there. A reminder for everybody, you may have to have the Zoom meeting chat box. You can open using the icon at the bottom of your screen. I've been writing down a couple of questions that we have that have been sent over to me for the during the course of these presentations. But I would like to maybe ask a couple of questions that did come up in the chat. First off, first question that came up was from Linda. And Linda, you asked for Michelle, if Michelle could comment on the creation of the Disability Act. Does that cover the question pretty well, or do you want to add to it, or can Michelle run on that?
I think Michelle can run on that, but you know, there's in the United States, there's an act called the ADA, Americans with Disability Act. And the very first thing that Trudeau did when he got into office was to begin a similar kind of act in Canada. And I don't know if other people on the call have received the questionnaires. There's a website that you could go to and put your comments in. And I'm just wondering if Michelle knows how far that's progressed. It's probably been put on the back burner because of COVID, but I know.
So we have, so thanks Linda for the question. Yeah, we have a federal Disability Act now. It's the Accessibility for Canadians Act, the ACA. It has been in effect for over a year. It's in the stages of committees that are building out the structures that relate to standards. So for example, one of the, and again, as I mentioned, things are federally covered and you know, but are some odd areas, shall we say. So it only covers transportation if it crosses a provincial boundary.
That's
but it
right.
covers things like telecommunications. So there have already been work being done by the telecommunications subcommittee. So yes, we do, you know, we are a long way behind the Americans. We do have an act, as I say, that has been in place for over a year. But however, setting up all the internal workings of how that actually, you don't just bring an act in and then all of a sudden, you know, there has to be something that people have to respond to. At the same time, there is work afoot in BC right now to bring in line a BC accessibility law. That legislation is now stalled, obviously, until we get through our election tomorrow. So there has been a lot of questionnaires sent out for that. That's trying to follow a similar pattern than the provincial government took. Ontario has had the AODA for a while. Nova Scotia's Act, I think, has come online, and the same with Manitoba. But we're very limited until we have provincial, territorial, and federal legislation. Then there's going to be big gaps in the system, and until those have been running for some time.
Michelle, is the one in British Columbia the Barrier-Free BC?
No, that's a group of people, Linda. That's an organization.
Yeah.
But the act itself doesn't have a name yet until the government puts that out. But it's an accessibility law, the same as as will come out as the same as come out federally. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
The next question I have here is for Denise, actually, and this might require some slide re-navigation. He just asked if you can repeat the Ask Me 3 slide, and I believe that would be the 3 questions that you ask for that. So Denise, can you talk through that one again just very quickly?
Yeah, so I think you've got it up there on the screen, Ask Me 3. And what it is it's a tool that came out of the Institute for Healthcare Improvement. And it's something that you can use when going to a medical appointment. So, not necessarily just a doctor's appointment, but let's say you go to see a physiotherapist because you're noticing that you're a bit weak on your left side and it's causing you issues with your mobility. At the end of that appointment, just to summarize it and to make sure that you have all the information, you can say, what is my main problem? They might say you've got weakness in your hip flexors on that left side. What do I need to do about it? Complete these 3 exercises daily for 6 weeks. And why is this important for me to do? Well, because by doing these exercises, we're hoping to strengthen that specific muscle group, which will improve your mobility. So it's just sort of a way to summarize at the end of a medical appointment that you have all the information that you need to be able to move forward. I hope that clarifies that.
Is there a link or a place where you can go to download that sheet, or can that be provided to us?
Yes, so the CCMI stands for the Center for Collaboration, Motivation, and Innovation. So I'm sure, Ray, that's probably something you're able to Google and find the link and perhaps share through the chat box. The CCMI is something that healthcare providers often intersect with because it helps, it sort of helps provide us with tools to support clients with achieving their goals. So it kind of brings things like motivational interviewing and behavioral activation and different tools to increase clients' sense of being able to achieve their goals. So some of the information on there is a bit more geared towards healthcare providers, but I also think it's a great source to look at some of the tools that they might provide, such as the brain tool, that can sort of help you to be, again, the goal here is to be more active within your healthcare. So, it's to move away from this idea that you come to your medical appointments and your healthcare provider has all the answers and you just sort of sit there quietly. It gives you the tools to be able to come and ask the questions and take a bit more of a structured approach to engaging in your healthcare. So it's a great website, and they offer a lot of online training as well. Again, it's a bit more geared towards healthcare providers, but have a look and see if anything might be interesting.
I have a more specific personal story question, one from who asks specifically, is it better to have care from an MS specialist or a neurologist versus a general neurologist? The context of this question is a little bit more specific, feeling that perhaps a neurologist isn't paying attention to all of the visible symptoms, like fatigue or cognitive impairment and depression, other things that go around that. So the question is, how do you communicate while maintaining a positive relationship? Or do you suggest continually updating with these symptoms as they become problematic so they can be recorded? And I think that might be a general question I'll just throw up in the air. That might even be something for our MS navigator who hasn't been brought into the question answer yet. Does anybody want to take on that question?
I can. This is Cheryl. I'm with the MS Navigators. Hi. So what I'm hearing from that question is basically you're looking for more information about how to communicate directly with the healthcare team that you have right now. And some of the information that Mary has shared with you and Denise has shared with you is information that we, the navigators, would share with you as well. We also have specific tools and resources available to us that we email to people who have these same kinds of questions. So my suggestion to you would be for you to call us. I believe Ray has put our phone number there. It's a toll-free number across Canada, as well as our email address. and ask us specifically to provide you with information and support around communicating with your healthcare team.
Yes, definitely reach out to the MS Navigator for all questions as they come up. I have a question that I wrote down because I'm not seeing a whole lot of other questions. One other question from another person was asking, is there going to be a session like this for Ontario? So I don't know if anybody on the call could speak to that or answer that kind of a question. I don't know. Hearing none.
Carol with the MS Navigators again. I can't answer that specific question if there will be another webinar. However, when people phone us, the navigators, from wherever they are in Canada, they will get assistance around advocacy, self-advocacy for wherever it is that they are. That's all provinces and territories. So we adapt information that we get from each of our division offices, and we adapt it so that we can provide the same kind of information to everybody in Canada. I hope that kind of answers the question.
I think that answers the questions very well.
Ray, it's Linda. I did a similar presentation online for MS Manitoba about 3 or 4 years ago. I did a couple for them. I did it on advocacy. I did it on preparation for travel. I put it on traveling with a disability.
And we, the navigators, have access to all of those past webinars that have been done. And we look for those specific things for people and send them the links to it.
Right.
That's great. I have a couple of questions that I wrote down to see if anybody else would go that. For the note about the webinar in Ontario, for everybody, that just a reminder, this is being recorded and it will be posted on the website for VLAP. So you'll be able to share this recording out with other people who might find this information useful. One question I had for Linda, actually, and this is specifically regarding your thank you cards. Do you carry a stack of thank you cards that are pre-filled out that you can add notes to when you get really excellent service from somebody? Or how do you manage that?
I have blank ones in my drawer.
Mm-hmm.
I just have blank cards. I just buy a bunch with great pictures of British Columbia. And I write a note. Now, I do admit I write it when I'm in the mornings when my hands are way better. But no, I just do them individually. I just think it's really helpful to get something personal. And maybe I'll just really quickly say that during the COVID, when it's really important for us to keep in touch with people, and this will be written up in the next edition of Shared Voices, what I've done is I've gone through all of my old photographs and I found pictures of weddings of a friend who got married 22 years ago, and I just sent them anonymously to her. I have pictures. I went to Disneyland with a friend and his kids about 15 years ago, and I just sent the pictures of the kids they're in college now, but I just did it anonymously. And I think getting something personal in the mail can be really more helpful than just a phone call sometimes.
That is great feedback and excellent advice, always to make sure that you maintain contact with people who are helpful, because when you say thank you, they're more likely to help you again in the future. Yeah. I think we are wrapping up for questions and answers. I'm going to post a link in the chat here for where the Shared Voices newsletter can be found if you want to find that.
Really, it's Linda. Can I throw one more thing out? I gave my example of getting my hand control, and I've had 3 other people call me, and we got, by working together with them and sending letters, we got hand controls in a Toyota and in another van that had no hand control programs.
Oh, it's a huge question for anybody that needs additional modifications to their cars.
Very
Excuse me, there was one question at the beginning. This is Cheryl with the Navigators, asking about virtual self-help groups. Again, it's people can call our phone number and our email address, and we will find self-help groups that may be operating virtually in your area. We have a list of some of them. And we also have wellness resources during COVID on our website. So that's information people can get from us.
Important information. Make sure you reach out to the MS Knowledge Network when you have questions that we don't know the answers to, because obviously we don't always know the answers, and they know who to ask. So I want to thank everybody right now for your interest in this webinar presentation. It's time to end the question and answer period. I'd like to ask one final question. In fact, I just did that actually, is if there's any one question in the chat that hasn't been covered. I think we've gone through everything in there. If you do have anything that you really need to know, please speak now or hold your peace until the next presentation we have. I want to send out a large thank you to our presenters for providing such informative material. Linda and Michelle and Denise and Mary have a wealth of information, and I thank them very strongly for providing this information for everybody. Before we close, I'd like to remind everybody that this webinar is recorded. It will be posted on the VLAP webpage in the coming weeks. I want to remind you about the MS Society's Knowledge Network and Volunteer Legal Advocacy Program. Knowledge Network is staffed from trained navigators to answer questions related to MS. VLAP assists individuals with disability applications, general and legal advocacy issues, and you can see on the slide below how to connect with them by phone and email. A final reminder that you will be receiving a survey following this webinar series, and I encourage you to fill it out. Let us know if this information was valuable. Again, thank you to Linda McGowan, Michelle Hewitt, Denise Kendrick, Mary Lang, and to all of you for participating in today's webinar. Sign off as you like and look forward to the next set of information that's coming up from the MS Society in coming weeks and months as we continue through. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording now and have a most excellent afternoon.